caregiving is a really fundamental, deep part of human nature. If you ask most people, what's the most morally profound, significant, meaningful thing in your life, they'll say something about the way that they have been taking care of children or parents or friends or spouses.
The new study is raising red flags about the state of caregiving across the country. Researchers say about half the states are at risk of a caregiving crisis.
And yet, it's been largely invisible in the academic world. If you look at moral philosophy or moral psychology or politics or economics, you don't see very much discussion of caregiving. What we're trying to do with this project is get care away from, here's the practicalities of childcare, here's the crisis in elder care, to think about it in a more general philosophical way. Try and think about what it is that care means. Why do human beings cooperate? Why am I going to be altruistic towards you? The kind of classic description of human relations is some kind of reciprocity. I do something for you, you do something for me. Tit for tat. But caregiving isn't like that. The very nature of caregiving is that we care for people like infants or elders who are not going to be able to reciprocate. That makes it a very profound relation, but one that's very different from other relations. We know that there have to be neural mechanisms, even hormonal mechanisms, that let, say, a mammalian mother take care of a baby. And we have this very long, very helpless period of childhood, which automatically requires care. So there seems to be a kind of biological story. But for humans, it becomes much more general, like the case of elderly parents. We care for the dead. So even though the dead, by definition, don't have resources and can't help us or reciprocate, we think it's important to respect the wishes of the dead. We can end up with institutions. I mean, a charity is an institution that's designed to provide resources just because the recipients of that charity need those resources. So that's sort of our general picture. It starts out being rooted in biology, but it becomes something that's much more general and abstract. What do we think about care? What kind of intuitive theories do we have about care? When do children start understanding care? And what do they understand about care? So this is the kind of intelligence of care. And again, this is kind of invisible. We know nothing about what children think about care. We have just a few studies just started that suggest that young kids, 4 and 5-year-olds, think that if you don't actually have tit-for-tat reciprocation, that's a signal that someone's caring for you. So the fact that mom will put a blanket on you, even if you don't put a blanket on mom, is something that even little kids seem to understand and think about. So there's enormous scope for thinking about how do kids learn about care? How do they learn how to become caregivers as adults? It's easy to say when we care for someone, we want to help them to accomplish their goals. But it's not quite so simple, because very often the things that would make the person best off might be different from the things that the person wants. You think about an elderly father who wants to keep driving, even though it's not good for him to drive. If I'm caring for him, what should I do? That could easily turn into a power relationship. And I think it's a real question about how do you keep caring from flipping over into a power relation. Another thing that we're doing is looking across cultures and contexts. So we have a sort of picture of how care works in Western, educated, industrial, rich democracy context. It's interesting that in our kind of individualist culture, there's often a sense that there's something wrong with me. No, I shouldn't have to have someone take care of me. I should be able to just do this on my own. And that's a big question, both in, say, thinking about adolescence and thinking about elders or thinking about the ill. If people could think, no, actually being cared for is part of being human as much as caring for others is part of being human. Our culture really seems to have this picture that just the mother of a child or the daughter of an elder is supposed to be responsible for that care. We really have kind of reverse stereotypes where we don't let men be involved in caregiving, even though in other cultures, men are much more involved in caregiving. If you look at people who are childcare workers or people who are elder care workers, they're overwhelmingly women. And often in the United States, care work has been done by immigrant women and women of color. So how do we deal with this kind of gendered tradition and history of care? I think that's a really interesting, difficult thing to sort out. Now, it has to be said, just about every civilized Western country devotes more resources to care from the state than the United States does. In the United States, we have this terrible care crisis where both caring for children and in some ways even more caring for elders is a terrible crisis. We're terribly in need of resources.
New reports show that childcare costs in most states cost more than college tuition.
The recent AARP report found that 38 million Americans are spending a full quarter of their annual income on caregiving costs.
People have thought more about this in the context of childcare. Either you have individual parents who are paying for childcare, or you have people who are providing childcare. And what that means is either the childcare workforce is going to be very underpaid, which in fact they are, or else the cost of childcare is going to be impossible for parents. And as time has gone on, both of those things have happened. And we have a similar kind of issue now with elder care. And yet, again, it's the children who have to figure out, how do I pay for the assisted living center for my father, or how do I figure out how to take care of them myself? So we have this crisis at both ends. A big part of our project has been collaborating with people in policy and political science about what kind of policies could we have that would enable people to provide care. We're thinking about things like, could you have an elder care allowance that was like a family allowance, where, say, the daughter or the son in the family could get an allowance to take care of an elderly parent. Another thing that we've been looking at is intergenerational housing. Maybe if we had the grandparents and the elders and the kids and the adults physically closer together, that would provide a structure in which we could have more care. Another example is the idea that you could have an elder care commitment, just a friend who would have an official legal status as a carer for another friend. Everybody cares about the way that we take care of children and the way that we take care of elders. And there's a great opportunity for policies that kind of cross some of our partisan divides. If you look at the happiness literature, the thing that really seems to make people happy often is caring for other people. The satisfactions of care seem to be so deep, sort of independently of, are you momentarily more happy or less happy or more free or less free than you would have been otherwise. It becomes something that really underpins a lot of the most valuable aspects of human life. And it seems to be so much what makes you thrive and flourish.